So hello YouTube, this is Thomas Judge back once again with another YouTube video, and in this case it's another custom binding, and in this case it's a custom binding of the Earth X trilogy, or as I like to think of it, fixing Marvel's Omnibus mistake. I know it's a bit of a clickbait title, but hopefully when we go through the video you'll see exactly what I mean, and I'm not really having a go at Marvel or really trying to malign them in any way, but I think it's going to be pretty clear that the choices they made when it came to this omnibus was pretty strange and pretty inscrutable. So with no further ado, let's jump straight into Earth X and the Earth X universe. You've probably seen the artwork. It looks something like this. This is one of the amazing splash covers. Actually, I think this one combines a lot of the different covers throughout the series into one huge amazing splash image. The artwork is done by Alex Ross, and those of you that know your comics will know Alex Ross is the artist for Kingdom Come, and also for Justice, and also for Marvels. So he really is the guy who's cornered the market when it comes to that kind of photorealistic, painted, illustrated artwork for comics. And it looks great. The important thing to keep in mind here is that although Alex Ross did the covers for the Earth X trilogy, he didn't actually do the interiors. The interiors were done by a guy called John Paul Leon. And Alex Ross, in conjunction with Jim Kruger, actually just wrote the series. It's important to keep that in mind because the internal artwork looks like this. And as such, it looks, I think fair to say, substantially different and substantially less elaborate and less impressive than the covers. So that's the first thing to keep in mind. A lot of people think that if you're going to buy the Earth X series, you're going to have this sumptuous Alex Ross artwork throughout. That is not the case. As well as that, there's actually a fair amount of reading and text in every single issue. The first page of every single issue collected within has got a short dialogue blurb like this. And then every single issue ends with an appendix. I've got a couple of pages of it here, but it's an appendix with a few sketches and a lot of text. And I'm talking about 7 or 8 pages of just sheer prose. As a result, there's a lot of reading to this series. And that's because it's quite a cerebral series. And I'll go into that a bit more later when I talk about it. But just know what you're getting into. What you're getting into is not what it looks like on the cover. It's not Alex Ross artwork, and it's a lot of text and a lot of prose and a kind of the scratchier, angrier, I think if I'd say cruder art style inside. So let's look at what was released in collected editions. Firstly, we've got the Earth X hardcover. I'll talk about the paperbacks in a second, but the hardcover came out, I think in about 2008. The original comic series as single issues came out in about 99, 2000, 2002. There's a hardcover. It looks nice. We'll see that again in a second. And then over the last year, Marvel has released the rest of the trilogy. And how have they released it? This is my problem. They've released the trilogy as a pair of books. I'll stress that again. They've released a trilogy, 3 volumes of 12 issues or so each, as a pair of books. It's just very odd, isn't it? It's just a strange thing to do. So looking at the covers here, the first one, Earth X Alpha, contains all of Earth X and all of Paradise X, the sequel. Universe X, the sequel. Whereas Earth X Volume 2, Omega, contains all of Paradise X, which is only 12 issues, give or take, with a few extra spin-offs. It's just a strange thing to do. I don't know why they did it. Is it because they like the idea of calling one Alpha and one Omega and they forgot the other 20-odd letters of the Greek alphabet? I don't know. It's really just an inscrutable reason at the end of the day. And especially given the Earth X hardcover existed, I don't know why they didn't just release Universe X and Paradise X in turn. But anyway, fine, Marvel, you're doing that. I can't have a trilogy on my shelf in 2 volumes. It's just not acceptable, basically. Let's look a little bit closer at what you did actually release. There you have the Earth X Alpha cover, which looks really nice. And there you have the back of it. Also looks really nice, again, using the Alex Ross artwork. And then you have the Earth X Omega cover. And again, you have the back of the Earth X Omega, again, drawn by Alex Ross. And like I say, Earth X Omega just contains the Paradise storyline. Yeah. It's just a very strange choice, a trilogy in 2 parts. If you're interested in knowing much more about the Earth X universe and the reviews of the Omnibus and the Omega and the Alpha and so on, I highly recommend checking out an actual review of it on YouTube. Name It Conditioned is a great one. I'll put a link to it in the description below. But this isn't really going to be a review per se of the comic. It's more going to be about the binding and the rationale behind that. So let's look at the paperbacks. Here we have the 6 paperbacks in total. There's one for Earth X. Universe X was released as Volume 1 and Volume 2, and the reason for that is that as well as the 12 issues that make it up, it had a couple of spin-offs at the beginning and a couple of spin-offs at the end. And then Paradise X is also collected as 2 volumes, and again that's because there's quite a few spin-offs and like little mini shorts and things like that to sort of pad it out. So Earth X is just 12 issues straightforward, that's it, and the rest of them have got a little bit of extra content, which is all collected, but it's why they're split into 2 volumes. And there, on the top shelf, in the middle, is Earth X Companion, which was released several years ago, but it's just like a sketchbook companion of loads of Earth X stuff that wasn't contained in the Earth X hardcover. What I'm going to look at are just the 5 that I haven't got a hardcover of. I actually have the Earth X hardcover, which is oversized and is lovely, and so it's these 5 trade paperbacks here I'm going to be looking at in terms of actually binding them and getting something done with those. So there's the cover of them there. I've taken Earth X away and you're just looking at the 5 paperbacks, and again keep in mind you've got 2 volumes for Paradise, 2 volumes for Universe, and then 1 spin-off sketchbook volume. You turn them off, you see the backs there. I'll make a point here just to highlight if anyone has got the trade paperbacks. Have you ever actually read the blurb on the back? Because I read them for the first time when I was designing this custom bind, and it was only at that point that I realised they're basically incoherent, non sequitur gibberish. They actually make no sense whatsoever. That's one thing Marvel has done well with the new Omnibus reprints, is they've rewritten the blurb with the dust jackets, and now it makes coherent sense. But the stuff on the back of the existing trade paperbacks is just complete nonsense, actually. Anyway, I decided to get them bound, and here's a picture of what they look like bound. So you'll see I've got Earth X as the original hardcover, which is oversized, and then the Universe X and Paradise X I got bound as 2 separate volumes, one for Universe X, one for Paradise X. They're a shorter size, and that's because trade paperbacks are a smaller size than oversized hardcovers. And you'll notice I've got the dust jacket and so on done. I'll show you that in a second. Interesting thing here, on the spine, instead of having Marvel, I decided to just have the Earth X logo, but that way all the X's line up with the bottom of the Marvel logo, so it looks kind of nice anyway. I've also got a sky view there just to give you an idea of the difference in size. It's small, but it's enough that it does actually kind of bother me a little bit, and the reason for that is simply because I prefer to have these things line up well. I prefer to have these things look nice on the shelf. Now, from my point of view, I could have had it custom printed, and if you're interested in finding out what I mean by that, then check out my other videos where I get things custom printed into omnibus or hardcover size. But in this case, it's a cost prohibitive, expensive, laborious process, and trade paperbacks themselves don't have any adverts or any of the other problems that I have with binding single issues. So I decided to run with it like this. I'm going to show you a video now of the Earth X hardcover, and you'll see there it looks lovely, it's glossy, it's got the Alex Ross artwork on the front, the side, nice font, nicely laid out, and the back again has got a nice quote and a bit of a blurb, and it's got just some stuff there to give you an idea of what the covers inside are going to look like. I'll have a quick flick through, but just as we do that, I just thought I'd give a quick mention to actually why I like this series and why I decided to get it collected. So Earth X is an alternate future of the Marvel Universe, of what they call the Marvel 616, which is the number they have for the standard universe. And it's set a fair bit in the future when everything is just changed. Like it's a very dystopic, kind of dark, brooding universe. It's not dissimilar, I think, from the direction some of the Marvel stuff has gone now, in that essentially what happened is everyone in the world has got superpowers, and it kind of tries to examine the idea of what would happen in a world where everyone has superpowers. Where do superheroes try to feel relevant? If you read things like, let's see, the Infinity Saga by John Hickman and things like that, you'll start to understand exactly what I mean when I say there are hints of that in the current Marvel Universe, but it's fair to say it's a completely different universe and timeline. In terms of what that means, it's a bit of an odd one. The first time I read it, I have to admit, I didn't massively enjoy it. But the second time round when I read it, I really started to take much more away from it. It's a very cerebral, very intelligent read. The prose bits before and after, the appendices with lots of text that I mentioned, are really detailed and really, really interesting. In a way, this is kind of a fan letter or a fan fiction for the whole Marvel Universe. It's a real love letter to every little esoteric bit of information about the Marvel Universe, be that the X-Men, be that the Avengers. It has so much trivia and so much nuance and so much love and detail taken into everything that they put together in this world. It really is fascinating. It's a heavy read. It's, I don't want to sound pretentious about it, but it's an intellectual read. It's a literary read. It's not for everyone, and I absolutely openly, candidly admit that. The first time I read it, I thought it was dull and didn't really get on with it. But since then, I've read it several times, and each time I take away much, much more from it. I especially love the appendices and the sort of the prose dialogues at the end. And to be honest, I would love to see this written as a prose novel. I would love to pick that up. Anyway, going back to the flick through, you'll see here I'm just kind of flicking through the Universe X here. I did a quick demo or a quick showcase of the front covers, and you'll see that the official one, the Earth X one, had an embossed cover, but this Universe X does not. You'll see at the back of the Universe X I've thrown in a whole bunch of extra features. These are all the extra features that came from the Earth X Companion trade paperback. So this hardcover you're looking at right now is actually Universe X Volume 1, Universe X Volume 2, and then the Earth X Companion right at the end. One of the things I should point out about the Earth X Companion is actually a part of that, not much of it, but part of it is actually collected in the Earth X hardcover. So I didn't even collect the entire Earth X Companion in the Universe X bind. Anyway, here we are onto the Paradise X volume as well. And again, you'll see, I've gone with Alex Ross art on the cover, Alex Ross art on the back. That cap image I absolutely love. And then I put in a fair bit of effort trying to rewrite the blurbs. Like I say, the trade paperback blurbs were just incoherent and made no sense whatsoever. So on that basis, I rewrote them, came up with something that actually made much more sense and was much more reflective of what was going on in the stories. And then this one here is a bind of Paradise X Volume 1 and Paradise X Volume 3. Keep in mind, if you look at the actual bind order that Marvel used and what's collected, there's a whole load of spin-offs. I think there's a spin-off called Zen, there's a spin-off called Ragnarok, a spin-off called Beasts. Some of them are several issues long anyway. So it is quite a weighty read. It's not just 12 single issues the same way Earth X was. But having said that, I still can't really see how Marvel justify having this as a two-part trilogy in omnibus form. Paradise X is not thick and weighty and comprehensive enough to be the equivalent in thickness of Earth X and Universe X combined. So it's a really weird choice. That's why I just couldn't really deal with it, and I thought I have to have my own custom bind of this, so at least it's a trilogy. And like I say, it's one of my favourite stories. I'd highly recommend checking it out. What I would do is I would check out Earth X, get it from your local library or read it digitally through Marvel Unlimited or something like that, and get a feel of whether or not you like it and it suits you. Earth X is probably the best standalone single part of this trilogy. It was never actually designed as a trilogy, and if you like that, then Universe X leads very smoothly into Paradise X, and as a trilogy as a whole, they sit together very well anyway. So I hope that was useful, guys. I hope the videos were useful. I hope the opinion and the overview was okay and didn't come across as a bit too much. I hope that's all very clear, basically. So here's another image of my custom binds. And yeah, I'm aware that the height doesn't quite match up, but that's something that I'm willing to live with. On the basis that at least I've combined trade paperbacks here, and as anyone who's followed my videos will know, the main reason to do custom prints is partly to match up the size and partly to get rid of all the useless content in the middle of a single issue, which will be the adverts and the extraneous bits and pieces. With these, I was combining trade paperbacks, and so I thought, you know what, the time, the effort, the expense, it's not worth going to get it actually made larger in size. I will stick with this as it is, and to be honest, I'm very happy with it. One thing that I wasn't very happy with is I found out later that Marvel over in France, which is part of Panini Comics, have actually released it in this format, which is a actual trilogy of Earth X, Universe X and Paradise X, which looks lovely. And you can see that as a trilogy rather than as a pair of omnibuses, it completely makes sense. And I don't understand why Marvel in France were able to do this, whereas Marvel in English-speaking companies was not. I don't speak any French in the slightest, so this is not something I am ever going to be able to get. But it's just interesting to see how things vary from region to region. Anyway, I hope that video was okay, guys. Hope that was an interesting insight into some more custom binds and the reasons to do them, and the reasons why you shouldn't really settle on odd things in your collection, like a trilogy in 2 parts or things like that. As always, please like, comment, subscribe, and as always, please support the channel by heading over to Amazon.com and picking up the first episode of my episodic prose novel, No Gods or Kings. It's about 200 pages and costs less than $1 or less than £1, so any support is really, really appreciated, guys. Thanks very much, and until next time, stay classy.